Next up,
Yes.
Steve.
Go.
Hey.
Go! Go! Hi, my name is Steve Herder, and this guy's name's Herder as well. I found him on the internet one evening by accident. Yeah, we're both looking in the same direction. This is Anecdotes from the Classroom. I've been teaching for 21 years in Japan. I started in a private school, where it's one-on-one. I made so many mistakes in about the first 10 years. I learned a lot of things. This was I ran from training into the classroom. I was late because the training wasn't finished, and a woman with a complete white face was sitting in the private room waiting for me. And I was like, oh my God, what's happening? This was my first student. And we were teaching this book called Coast to Coast years ago. And this is actually her. And what I learned from her, I learned something from all these students, is that she didn't want to study Coast to Coast. She was a professor in a university who was on health leave, and she was a specialist on Virginia Woolf. She just wanted me to listen to her. And she kept pushing the book away, and I'd try to push it back. I was told the salaryman was going to be my next student. This was my image of salarymen. You know, on the train, salarymen, kids, and foreigners can get away with anything back in the early 1990s. I didn't know what was coming, but I had a pretty scary image of who was going to be walking into the room. But actually, the guy who walked into the room was Kenji. And Kenji was the same age as me, and I learned something very important from him. That's young me. I learned that my teaching affected people, because we were talking one day about what time you finish work in Canada. I said 5 or 6, and so he said, I'm going to do that too. And he did it, and nobody complained. He left at 6 o'clock. This girl's Miho. She was my first totally unmotivated student. Her mother forced her to study English. I learned about external motivation because one weekend her family took her to Hong Kong. She came back a brand new person. No matter what I tried in class, that external motivation of seeing English live really helped her. I want to tell you about the difficult students. I've had my share of difficult students over the year. I had a girl that in junior high school, Chun-Yi, and I threw her out of class one day, and it was one of the few times that I blew up. And I put her out and she wouldn't come back in for 3 weeks. She refused to go back. She actually looked like this. She didn't look like that other picture. But I learned from her that the teacher's sense of time and the student's sense of time is totally different. Because she came back to me weeks later, Steve Sensei, I'm a ballerina now. She was studying ballet, and she like wanted to hug me, and she was like my nightmare for that whole month. This was the worst student I ever had. I learned about the pain of being thrown off course. There was this one girl who sat there and kind of went, is that all you got? And I just remember she had this rather large chin. She said, you're not very good, are you? You're not a real teacher, are you? She didn't say a word, but that was the look on her face for 6 months. And I was just totally thrown off. There's another girl that we call, I nicknamed her Sinatra. I did it my way. She sat for 3 years. She carried her bag to class, and she put the earphones up under her sweater, and she listened to English music for 3 years in high school. And I was the only one who caught her or told her she couldn't. But she learned English, and she ended up marrying a sailor at Yokosuka. This is a girl named Fire Girl. I learned that timing is different. In high school, you have a 6-year relationship with students. She was quiet and morose and afraid in the first 2 years. She blossomed in the 3rd year, and she's the best student in the school right now. So that the timing is always different. A lot of people have a story like this. This is Yoko. The power of effort and sharing success. She failed at the stewardess or flight attendant interview 20 times. On the 21st time, she got a job at Virgin Atlantic. Wonderful job flying Tokyo, London, traveled around the world, married a British guy last year. Best student I've ever had in my life. This is way back 1990, Chikayo. I learned the importance of having a plan. She was the most talented, most interesting. She had no plan, and she just kind of disappeared after high school and was working in a convenience store or something. And I was shocked that I couldn't help her more. Little girl, mousy student, playing a game. Put your hand up, say, I went to the park with my friend. It's 8 points for your team in junior high school. So I said, stand up, put your hand up, say it. But if you're shy, just write it down, and I'll come over and see it for you. So I didn't even notice her. I've never noticed her before in a group of 40. She had written this sentence. I walked up, I read it, I was laughing to myself, I went back up to the board, and on her team I wrote 41 points, and the whole room erupted, and she became a superstar during that, and I learned that it's good to give options and alternatives, different ways. This is one of my best friends who sat next to me for 9 years in an elementary school, Ed. And talk about branding. Branding's very popular these days. He wore one of these 4 neckties for 9 years. That's all he wore. And people still remember him 15 years later. Oh, Pooh Sensei! Pooh Sensei! They don't know his name, but anyway. This was my Japanese senpai, Saito Sensei. I learned the power in riffing. He had this thing called gomi banashi. And the girls studying for entrance tests, but he would tell about his adventures in America. And this was one of the questions on his final test. I'm not a dog, I am the dog. Please explain why that is. So he was constantly. Another teacher that came up, Nori Sensei, she was a total Hanshin Tigers fan. I observed her class one day, she asked me, and it was boring as can be. And she was teaching, I wish we could have, and she couldn't explain it. And I said, at lunchtime you talk about the Hanshin Tigers every single day. She went back the next day and talked about Hanshin Tigers. The class was alive and on fire. Veteran teacher. She's been in the school 41 years. She's the genkiest, most powerful. She just struts her stuff, and she's in total control. I'm at 21 years and feel like I'm halfway. She's the model of the teacher I would like to be at some point. These are my kids, Sarah and Ren. I've learned that my perception and reality is often different. I often misunderstand what's happening, but I'm learning things from them every day, and I hope that we all continue to learn messages from both within the classroom that we can use in life and beer time.
Yay!